The Kourting Happiness Podcast official merchandise store is now open. I am so happy to be able to share that with you. I'm Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm so happy that you're here. Your support makes a difference. Thank you so much for listening to the Kourting Happiness Podcast. You know, it's so hard to believe that we started in 2020, and because of you, we've grown worldwide in the United States, India, Ireland, Australia, the United Kingdom, and more. Because of you, we've interviewed best-selling authors, scholars, podcasters, TEDx speakers, and entrepreneurs making a global impact. Because of you, FeedSpot has named Kourting Happiness one of the top 80 podcasts for workplace and happiness. Because of you, the podcast is helping people and organizations with their well-being one episode at a time. We share positive psychology, work from thought leaders, and inspirational stories that create inclusion, belonging, and the value of optimism. I'm so grateful for your support. Your purchase in this store contributes to producing the Kourting Happiness Podcast and your commitment to the shared mission of helping with spreading workplace well-being and a happier life. Listeners like you help build Kourting Happiness programming that promotes positivity, well-being, and it supports providing a range of content that continues with the mission. We need your support to continue to grow and create content that spreads happiness. We hope you love wearing these specially made t-shirts, totes, and sweatshirts designed by me, and even inspirational cups too. Trust me, your morning coffee will love it. Every design is my thank you to you. So check out the Kourting Happiness merchandise store at drkortnialston.com/merchandise. That's drkortnialston.com/merchandise. Thank you so much for supporting Kourting Happiness. Now, let's get back to the podcast. Welcome to the Kourting Happiness Podcast. This is a space where self-care becomes part of your day. A space where you learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness. And my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Kourting and Kourting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in Kourting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 93. I'm Dr. Kortni Alston. Thank you so much for listening. I am so happy that you're here. So I have a couple of questions for you. Are you a manager thinking about how to best support your team? Are you thinking about how to support them through mental health, right? Through their mental health? Or are you a manager always thinking about employee wellness and how you can continue to serve your team? And you might be now asking your question like, yes, Dr. Kortni, I have been thinking about all these things. Now you might be wondering how. Well, today we're going to answer those questions to be able to help support you to support your team. Today, I'm going to discuss ways managers can support employee mental health. And I'm going to share information that I found that is really an incredible article that you can read in more depth on our website, which is drkortnialston.com/podcast/episode 93. That's drkortnialston.com/podcast/episode 93. Well, the article is written by Kelly Greenwood and Natasha Krol, and they share just really 8 ways managers can do just that in terms of supporting employee mental health. And it's published in the Harvard Business Review. So let's talk about some of these practices that they share. And then I'm going to share some of my insight being a trainer in this space, dealing with workplace well-being, and also my work in regards to serving as a happiness scholar. And so first off, I really value this article. It is a must read. I certainly highly recommend going to our website to read it in its entirety and to really be inspired by it. I know I certainly was a person in this space. One of the things I really also valued is the fact that it gives you a great link to their mental health report for work. So it's their 2019 Mental Health at Work report. Great PDF that provides a lot of great insight. So certainly make sure you go to the episode page of this show to learn more. So let's talk more about these best practices. First one is they share is be vulnerable. I love this information in terms of sharing it with managers. Greenwood and Krol mentioned that the silver lining of the pandemic is normalizing mental health challenges. And I agree. I really value the fact that what the pandemic has done is created a really interesting time of us sharing about workplace well-being and mental health. It's interesting because I often share this when I'm talking about my area of research, and people are usually asking me about some of my clients or organizations that I worked with in regards to helping provide workplace well-being training. And I often share this. I share that before the pandemic, there was this interest and people would come to me and organizations would come to me. But once the pandemic hit, it seemed, actually, not even it seemed, I ended up getting more demand as it relates to talking about workplace well-being, talking about mental health, understanding the value of research in positive psychology to really help organizations flourish. And so what's interesting to me was to see how the pandemic really put us in a position of really valuing and looking at and talking more freely about workplace well-being and employee mental health in regards to the fact of really thinking about what that looks like. How are we going to help provide support? And then also letting people, as I often share, making sure you're creating an environment where people feel safe, seen, and supported. And so I love that you're talking about the value of managers being vulnerable because it speaks to so much in terms of allowing not only this dialogue, but then also showcasing your challenges, right? I often share this during training sessions that before I became a happiness scholar, when I was working as a television reporter, I was the worst as it relates to my well-being. And I often share that story. And I think some people are shocked when I do that, that I was the journalist that would go out and cover stories, and I would get so focused in on my live shot of putting or producing my piece that I would like scarf down lunch. I would go to like if I happen to even hit a restaurant to go to the drive-through and to order, because sometimes if I wasn't like quickly eating lunch, I was completely ignoring it. And so, I often mention how I wasn't the very best when I was reporting and thinking about my well-being. And I think when I go and I talk to other journalists, and when I go and I share this story with executives, they go, wow, I've been there before. It resonates, opposed to me going into a room, sharing with people, this is what you need to do, or this is what's going to serve you. I humanize the experience by talking about myself and talking about things that I wasn't so good at, or things that I struggled with, or how I have evolved along the way. So I love that they're talking about the value of being vulnerable and what that can mean. They mention that vulnerability, well, in terms of managers being vulnerable about their mental health struggles as a leader, opens the door for employees to feel comfortable talking about their challenges. So even though I shared the example of, not being the best when it came down to my well-being, when it came down to, I used the example of food, right? In terms of skipping lunches or just quickly eating them. But I often share this too. And I also notice how this resonates as well. When I talk about how when I was a reporter at the beginning of my career and how I became a widow at 25 years old. And I talk about how how I value therapy, how I, at my 20s, found my therapist back then, and how she really served and supported me along the way. And then I bring it back to present day, being a happiness scholar, and then talking about the value of my current therapist. And I think because I speak so freely about therapy and how I include my therapist as part of my self-care squad, and how this person really helps serves as a support system for me to help other individuals. I also love that Dr. Brene Brown talks about this too. She talks about the therapist, which I think is so great that she shares this. And she talks about her, she really talks about her experience and her times, and the fact that how much she values therapy as well. So I often believe that sharing these experiences really helps in terms of giving people an opportunity to say, wow, especially when you're dealing with your team and they are searching for ways to find levels of support. And sometimes I think as human beings, things can look great on the outside, but what that tells us is that when we start sharing and saying, well, gosh, yes, I dealt with suffering, or I'm suffering through this, or, oh gosh, yes, that was this extremely stressful time. It humanizes and allows an individual to go, wow, if they can share this, and I feel like I'm not alone, because wow, I'm going through challenges too. And look at how they're growing. I often say growing through. So yes, I really value that they shared the importance of being vulnerable. So here's our next one that they're offering. And they say, build a culture of connection through check-ins. Greenwood and Krol share the value of being intentional, especially during the pandemic. They say with employees working from home, it can be challenging to really kind of see their struggle. And they mentioned their study, and they found that nearly 40% of global employees said that no one at their company had asked them if they're doing okay. 40% of employees around the world said that their company had not asked if they're doing okay. And so that in itself, right, gives us a great opportunity of looking at, okay, how can we change those numbers? How can we make sure that individuals feel seen, safe, and supported? They also mentioned that those respondents were 38% more likely than others to say that their mental health had declined since the outbreak. So I think what's so important also value is thinking about this opportunity in terms of really being able to support your team, right? Building a culture of connection through check-ins. So they say, go beyond, how are you? They mention ask specific questions about what support in terms of, providing support and being helpful. And I love this. They say, quote, wait for the full answer, end quote. Wait for the full answer. This is why I love this so much, because I love how they qualified listening as really listening. I like to say active listening. And I also value that they mentioned the importance of encouraging questions and concerns. They also add this: when your team is sharing their struggles, that it's okay not to know what to say. I think that in itself is huge, right? As being a manager, because when someone is coming to you and they're sharing their struggles, you may often want to say, gosh, okay, what am I going to recommend? Or you might say, I really don't really know the answer. And that's okay. That's okay. They share that what's important is creating a space that allows you to hear your team members, how they're doing, and also doing it with passion. Compassion. Doing it with compassion. On this podcast, past episodes, we talked about the value of compassionate work. I value so much this research behind compassionate work. I feel like it is truly a great strength of organizations. And having a compassionate workplace, right, allows you to really, really support your team. It's about being emotionally intelligent in regards to their needs. And then also making sure you're providing a support system that's going to serve. So I really treasure build a culture of connection through check-ins. I would like to share this. During the pandemic, I actually was invited to quite a few check-ins, and either called wellness check-ins or mental health check-ins. And I found as a person coming in, training or sharing information, that it was really a great space for people to really be seen. So they're in a group environment and with more than likely like-minded individuals, and they're having an opportunity to hear information that's going to serve them. And another thing that's very important is creating a space so they can share, creating a safe space so they can share information that's about their well-being, and also being open in terms of leadership to hear it. So check-ins are really transformative. So highly recommend check-ins as well. They also say offer flexibility and be inclusive. They urge not to make assumptions about what the direct report needs. They might need different things at different times. And so they also mention take a customized approach to addressing stress. They share examples from childcare or feeling the need to work all the time, in regards to an employee coming to you and sharing some of their concerns or stressors, right? And so they say proactively offer flexibility. And I really value that they're talking about the value and the importance of flexibility. They also mentioned this: is to communicate more than you think you need to. Communicate more than you think you need to. Make your team aware of mental health resources. So whatever the resources that the company may have, or you might have a company where you really haven't created them yet. And so could be a great starting point in terms of thinking about resources to really begin to develop within the company. In their study, they found that 46% of all workers had not proactively shared resources. They recommend when you share it again and again and again. And so I think it's so important to make sure that there's this continuous, right? this continuous conversation in terms of sharing what those resources are. I work with a great company that had me speak to their team. What I really valued about the company was that they did a wonderful job actually surveying their team, asking them questions as it relates to well-being, really being proactive, understanding the needs of their team and understanding what they can do better. And so by the time I came on board to speak to their team, they gave me great quantitative data as well as qualitative data to really understand the narratives and to really understand the well-being of their team. So I really value when organizations are extremely proactive and are flexible in regards to understanding their team, like, collecting data, finding out, having conversations, and then also creating a customized approach that will serve. So in the article, they mentioned, what can organizational leaders do? And I value what they shared. They say they urge leaders to invest in training, prioritize proactive and preventative workplace mental health training for leaders, managers, and individual contributors. And I will say, as a trainer in this space, I value seeing organizations being proactive, as I mentioned previously with some of my examples, but being proactive as it relates to their team and what they need, and also being very open to understanding, growing, and actively listening in regards to what those needs are. Understanding and being proactive can truly help to increase the well-being of your team. You can read more in the entire article by visiting, again, the episode page of this podcast at drcourtneyalston.com/podcast/episode 93. Always remember, your well-being is your most important job, and I'm always here to help. Thanks for listening. Let's continue this conversation online. Email us at podcast@drcourtneyalston.com. That's podcast at drcourtneyalston.com. Join us on Instagram at Kourting Happiness. Don't forget, that's courting with a K. Also, I hope you join our private Facebook community. You can find us at Kourting Happiness Podcast Community. Our private Facebook group is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. Now, are you ready to spread happiness? We hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. Thank you so much for listening. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.